I'm sitting here on my porch right now, years later, looking out at those mountains in the distance. Most people would see just another scenic view, trees, peak, maybe some clouds rolling in. But when I look at those mountains, I see something else entirely. I see the place where I had a friendship that nobody would believe if I told them. A friendship with something that shouldn't exist, at least not according to everything we're taught about the world. People talk about Bigfoot like it's a legend, a campfire story to scare kids or entertain tourists. Something that exists in grainy photographs and questionable videos. Never quite real enough to prove, but never quite fake enough to forget. I used to think the same way. Used to shake my head at those documentaries, at the people claiming to have seen something in the woods. I thought they were either lying or mistaken, seeing what they wanted to see instead of what was really there. I don't think that anymore. I know better now. I know because I spent 9 years developing a friendship with something that science says doesn't exist. 9 years of regular encounters, of learning to communicate across a divide that shouldn't be crossable, of building trust with a being that had every reason to stay hidden from humans. I've been hiking those mountains every weekend for over a decade before anything strange ever happened. Same trails, same routine, nothing out of the ordinary. The mountains were my escape from everyday life. Monday through Friday, I worked a regular job at an office, dealt with regular problems like deadlines and emails and meetings that could have been emails. I lived a regular existence in a regular town. Nothing special, nothing unusual. But Saturdays, those were mine. Just me and the wilderness, the way I liked it. I would wake up early, before sunrise usually, make coffee, and pack a simple lunch. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches and fruit and water. Throw everything in my backpack along with a first aid kit, some basic supplies, and head out while the world was still quiet. Every Saturday morning, I would pack my gear and head out, rain or shine. Winter, spring, summer, fall, didn't matter. I had the right equipment for every season, the right clothing for every weather condition. Snow didn't stop me, rain didn't stop me, heat didn't stop me. Those mountains were calling and I always answered. I knew those trails better than I knew the streets in my own neighborhood, could probably walk them blindfolded. I knew which sections got muddy in spring, which parts were shaded enough to stay cool in summer, which slopes caught the best light at sunset. I knew where the good overlooks were, where the streams ran cold and clear, where you might spot deer or elk if you were quiet and patient. That's how routine it had become. Comfortable, predictable, safe. And in all those years, nothing unusual ever happened. No strange encounters, no unexplained sounds, no mysterious tracks or signs of anything out of the ordinary. Just peaceful hikes through beautiful country, exactly what I wanted and expected. I saw plenty of wildlife over those years. Deer were common. You could hardly go out without seeing at least a few. Elk in certain seasons, moving through in their annual migrations. Birds of all kinds, from tiny songbirds to massive eagles riding the thermals. Once I saw a black bear from a safe distance, just doing its thing, not bothered by my presence. Normal wildlife, normal encounters, nothing that made me question reality. Until the day everything changed. It was a regular Saturday in early spring. The snow had just started melting, making the trails muddy and a bit treacherous. But I didn't mind. There's something peaceful about hiking when the weather isn't perfect. Fewer people on the trails, more solitude. Most weekend warriors stayed home when conditions were less than ideal, which meant I often had the mountains to myself. The air was crisp that morning, cold enough that I could see my breath, but warming up as the sun climbed higher. I had started the hike around 7:30, early enough to catch the best light, but late enough that the temperature was bearable. The trail was slick in places where meltwater ran across the path, and I had to watch my footing carefully. I was about 3 hours into my hike, moving through a dense section of pine forest. The trees were thick there, old-growth pines that must have been standing for 100 years or more. Their branches overhead blocked out most of the sunlight, creating this dim, cathedral-like atmosphere. Kind of gloomy, but in a good way, if that makes sense. Peaceful and quiet and separate from the regular world. I was just walking along, not thinking about much of anything. My mind was in that pleasant, empty state you get into on long hikes, where you're aware of your surroundings, but not really analyzing anything. Just existing in the moment, putting one foot in front of the other, breathing the clean mountain air. That's when I caught movement in my peripheral vision. Something shifting through the trees off to my right, maybe 50 yards away. At first I thought it was another hiker. You see them occasionally on these trails, even the less popular ones. Usually people give a friendly wave or nod and keep going, respecting each other's solitude. But as I focused on the movement, something felt wrong. The shape was off somehow. The proportions didn't quite match what I expected. And the way it moved through the underbrush, there was something unusual about the gait, the rhythm of its movement. Not quite right for a human. I stopped walking immediately, just froze in place on the trail, watching. My heart started beating faster, that instinctive response to something unexpected, something potentially dangerous. The figure continued moving between the trees, and that's when I realized it was definitely walking on two legs, but it was absolutely not human. It was smaller than what you hear in those legendary Bigfoot stories. Not some massive 8 or 9 foot creature that could tear trees out of the ground. This was maybe around 6 feet tall, about my height actually, with a lean build. Covered completely in dark brown hair that seemed to blend perfectly with the shadows between the trees. The Bigfoot moved with careful deliberation through the underbrush. Every step seemed purposeful, calculated, not crashing through branches or making unnecessary noise. Just moving smoothly and quietly, like something that knew these woods intimately and understood exactly how to navigate them without drawing attention. I held my breath, couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a person in a suit, some kind of prank or movie production. But no, the movement was too fluid, too natural. The way the muscles moved under that hair, the way it placed its feet, the posture and balance. That wasn't someone in a costume. That was a living creature. Then the Bigfoot stopped walking. The creature just stopped mid-step and turned its head directly toward me. And for maybe 3 seconds, we just looked at each other across that distance. I could see its face now more clearly than before, more human-like than ape-like, with a prominent brow but intelligent eyes that seemed to focus on me with awareness and understanding. Those eyes, that's what got me. There was intelligence there, clear and unmistakable, not the blank stare of an animal operating on pure instinct. This was something that was thinking, evaluating, making decisions. The Bigfoot was looking at me and assessing what I was, whether I was a threat, what it should do next. Then the Bigfoot bolted. 1 second it was standing there looking at me, the next it was moving faster than anything I'd ever seen. The speed was absolutely incredible. The creature moved through trees and over fallen logs like they weren't even there, like physics didn't quite apply the same way. The grace was completely inhuman, completely beyond what should be possible. The Bigfoot barely made a sound despite moving so fast. Just a soft rustle of leaves and branches, footsteps so light they barely registered, and then nothing. The creature was gone in seconds, disappeared so completely it was like it had never been there at all, like I had imagined the whole thing. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, maybe longer, heart pounding in my chest so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands were shaking, my legs felt weak. I had to lean against a tree to steady myself, to process what had just happened. This wasn't possible. This didn't happen in real life. but I had just seen it with my own eyes. I pulled up my phone to check the time, to ground myself in something real and normal. The screen showed 11:47 a.m., a perfectly ordinary Saturday morning in early spring. The sun was shining through gaps in the trees, birds were singing somewhere in the distance. Everything was completely normal except for the fact that I had just seen something impossible. I tried to replay the encounter in my head to capture every detail before memory started to fade or distort it. The way the Bigfoot moved, the color of its hair, the shape of its face, the intelligence in its eyes, the incredible speed when it ran. I wanted to remember everything exactly as it happened, not as my brain might later convince me it happened. Eventually, I started walking again, heading back toward the trailhead, but I kept looking around, scanning the trees, half expecting to see the Bigfoot again. Every shadow seemed suspicious now. Every sound made me jump. The peaceful forest I had walked through 1,000 times suddenly felt different, like there were secrets hiding just out of sight. I hiked back to my car in a complete daze. My body was on autopilot, following the familiar trail without conscious thought, while my mind replayed the encounter over and over. By the time I reached the parking lot, I'd almost convinced myself it didn't happen. Almost. The whole drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Should I tell someone? Call the local ranger station? Post something online? But what would I say? I saw a Bigfoot on the trail this morning. It was about 6 feet tall and ran away really fast. Without any proof, without any evidence, I would just sound crazy. People would think I was looking for attention or trying to start some viral hoax. I didn't have any photos, didn't have any video. The thought of pulling out my phone never even crossed my mind during those 3 seconds we looked at each other. I was too shocked, too focused on what I was seeing to think about documentation. Just my word about something I saw in the woods, and even to me, that didn't seem like enough. The next weekend, I went back to the exact same trail, same time of day. I left my house even earlier than usual, arriving at the trailhead while the parking lot was still empty. Part of me was nervous, wondering what I might see. Another part of me was excited, hoping for another encounter, another chance to prove to myself that what I saw was real. I moved slower this time, paying attention to everything around me. Every shadow between the trees got a second look. Every sound in the forest made me stop and listen. My eyes scanned the tree line constantly, searching for any sign of movement, any indication that I wasn't alone. But I didn't see anything unusual, just regular forest, birds singing, squirrels chattering, the wind moving through the trees. Normal sounds, normal sights, nothing that suggested the Bigfoot was anywhere nearby. I hiked the entire trail, covered every section where I thought the creature might be, and came up empty. I went back every weekend for 2 months. 8 consecutive Saturdays, same trail, same route, same hopeful searching. I varied my timing a little, tried different weather conditions, approached from different directions. Nothing made a difference. I never saw any sign of the Bigfoot. I started to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe it was a trick of light and shadow, my brain filling in the blanks and creating something that wasn't really there. Maybe I had been hiking alone for so long that my mind was starting to play tricks on me, showing me things I wanted to see rather than what was actually there. But deep down, I knew what I saw. The memory was too vivid, too clear, too detailed to be a hallucination or misidentification. That moment when we locked eyes, when I saw the intelligence looking back at me, the incredible speed when the Bigfoot ran, the grace and power of its movement. Those weren't imagined details, they were real. They had to be real. So I kept returning to those woods, not obsessively but consistently, every Saturday like clockwork, hiking my usual trails, keeping my eyes open, staying alert, hoping that maybe the Bigfoot would show itself again, would give me another chance to see what I knew existed out there. 3 months after the first sighting, I finally saw the Bigfoot again. It was late spring now, warmer weather bringing everything back to life. Everything was green and vibrant, flowers blooming along the trail sides, birds returning from their winter migrations. The mountains felt alive in a way they hadn't been during the cold months. I was hiking a slightly different route that day, higher elevation, rockier terrain. Sometimes I varied my path just to mix things up, to see different parts of the mountains. This particular trail was steeper, more challenging, but it offered incredible views from the higher elevations. I stopped near a rocky outcrop to drink some water and catch my breath. The climb had been tough, and I needed a break. I was standing there with my water bottle, looking out at the valley below, when I heard something moving through the brush downhill from me. I looked down the slope, and there it was, the Bigfoot. The same creature, I was absolutely sure of it. Same size, same dark brown coloring, same careful way of moving through the underbrush. My heart jumped into my throat and I froze, afraid that any movement would scare it away again. The Bigfoot was foraging, picking berries from bushes that grew on the slope. The creature seemed completely unaware that I was watching from above. The Bigfoot would reach out, examine a berry, decide whether to eat it or leave it. Some methodical process of selection, not just grabbing and eating everything available. I watched for maybe 5 minutes, hardly daring to breathe, fascinated by what I was seeing. Some of the Bigfoot's movements were surprisingly human-like. The way the creature reached for the berries, the gentle way it plucked them from the branches, even the way it occasionally looked around to check its surroundings before continuing to feed. There was an intelligence there that was undeniable. This wasn't a bear or a deer mindlessly eating whatever it found. This was something making choices, evaluating options, being selective about what it consumed. The Bigfoot would smell berries before eating them, would sometimes spit out ones that didn't meet whatever criteria it was using. Then the Bigfoot sensed me. I don't know what gave me away. Maybe I shifted my weight and a rock moved under my foot. Maybe the wind changed direction and carried my scent. Or maybe the creature just felt that sensation of being watched. The Bigfoot's head snapped up suddenly, looking right at me. We were maybe 30 yards apart now, much closer than the first encounter. Close enough that I could see real details of the Bigfoot's face. Those intelligent eyes fixed on mine, studying me with obvious awareness. I could see the creature's chest moving as it breathed, could see its hand still holding a berry it had been about to eat. The Bigfoot tensed up immediately, muscles coiling, getting ready to run again. I could see it in the creature's posture, that same pre-flight stance from before. In a second, the Bigfoot would bolt and I would lose this chance, maybe forever. I don't know what made me do it. Some instinct, some desperate attempt to show I wasn't a threat. I slowly reached into my pack, moving as carefully as possible, and pulled out an energy bar. One of those chocolate chip ones I always brought on hikes. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I held it up with both arms extended, showing it clearly to the Bigfoot, holding it high so the creature could see exactly what it was. The Bigfoot's head tilted slightly, watching this strange behavior, trying to figure out what I was doing. But the creature didn't run. That was the important thing. The Bigfoot stayed, watching, waiting. So very slowly, moving as non-threateningly as possible, I set the energy bar on a flat rock in front of me, placed it down gently, deliberately, making sure the Bigfoot could see the entire action. Then I backed away step by careful step, never breaking eye contact with the creature. The Bigfoot watched my every movement. I could see the creature's eyes tracking me as I moved back, see the slight movements of its head as it followed my retreat. But the Bigfoot didn't run, didn't charge, just watched with that unnaturally intelligent gaze. I moved back about 20 yards, far enough to give the Bigfoot plenty of space, close enough that I could still see the creature clearly. Then I turned and walked away. Every instinct told me to look back, to see if the Bigfoot was approaching the food, to watch what happened next. But I resisted the urge. I needed to give the creature space, show that I wasn't a threat, prove that I could be trusted. I hiked away slowly, listening for any sound of movement behind me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought the Bigfoot must be able to hear it from wherever the creature was. I hoped that maybe curiosity would win over fear. That maybe the Bigfoot would investigate what I had left, would take the offering, would begin to see me as something other than a potential danger. I returned to that same spot the following weekend. My heart was racing as I approached the rocky outcrop, not knowing what I would find. Part of me expected the energy bar to still be sitting there, untouched, proving that my attempt at connection had failed. But when I got close enough to see the flat rock clearly, my heart jumped. The energy bar was gone. The wrapper was sitting neatly on the rock, folded in half like someone had carefully placed it there instead of just discarding it. I picked up the wrapper with shaking hands, examining it like it was some precious artifact. The Bigfoot had actually taken it, had approached the rock, taken the food, and left the wrapper behind in a way that seemed almost polite. I left another energy bar that day, same spot on the rock, same careful placement. Then I backed away the same distance as before and hiked back to my car, my mind racing with possibilities. This could be the start of something, maybe not a friendship, maybe I was getting ahead of myself, but at least a connection, some kind of relationship with this incredible creature. This became my new routine over the following months. Every weekend, sometimes twice a week when I could manage it, I would hike to that spot and leave food. I would place it carefully on the rock, back away to a respectful distance, then hike back to the trailhead. Never pressuring, never rushing, always giving the Bigfoot plenty of space and time. Sometimes the food would be gone when I returned the next week. Sometimes it would still be there, untouched, the wrapper or container exactly as I had left it. I tried not to be disappointed on those weeks when the offering remained. Maybe the Bigfoot wasn't in the area. Maybe the creature had other food sources. Maybe it was just being cautious, still evaluating whether I could be trusted. I never saw the Bigfoot during these visits, but I could feel it watching sometimes. You know that sensation when you're being observed? That prickle on the back of your neck, that instinctive awareness that eyes are on you even though you can't see anyone? I felt that constantly during my hikes now. The hairs on the back of my neck would stand up, and I would know the Bigfoot was somewhere nearby, hidden in the trees or behind rocks, studying me from a distance, learning about me the way I wanted to learn about it. The thought made me careful about my behavior, conscious of appearing non-threatening, moving slowly and predictably. I started leaving different things to see what the Bigfoot would take. An apple one week, bright red and fresh from the store. Gone the next time I visited. Trail mix the week after that, a good quality mix with nuts and dried fruit. Gone. Dried meat, some jerky I had made myself. Gone within a few days. Fresh vegetables, baby carrots, and snap peas. Also gone. The Bigfoot seemed to take everything eventually, which told me the creature wasn't particularly picky. Or maybe it was just hungry enough that any food offering was welcome. Either way, the pattern was clear. I would leave food, the Bigfoot would take it, the wrapper or container would be left neatly on the rock, like a ritual we were developing together. 5 months after I started leaving food, I arrived at the usual spot on a warm summer morning and found something different. Something waiting for me instead of me leaving something for the Bigfoot. My heart nearly stopped when I saw it. A small fish, maybe 8 inches long, fresh caught and placed carefully on the flat rock where I always left my offerings. The scales were still glistening with moisture, probably from the river about half a mile away. This had been caught recently, maybe that morning, maybe even just minutes before I arrived. I looked around immediately, scanning the tree line, searching for any sign of the Bigfoot. I couldn't see anything, but the sensation of being watched was stronger than ever. The creature was close, I was certain of it. Close enough to have known when I was approaching, close enough to have left this gift just before I arrived. I picked up the fish carefully, treating it with the respect it deserved. This wasn't just food, this was a message, a gesture, an attempt at communication. The Bigfoot was reciprocating, wasn't just taking what I offered, but giving something back, trying to balance the exchange. That level of social understanding was remarkable. I held the fish up like a salute toward the trees, toward wherever I sensed the Bigfoot was watching from. I said thank you out loud, even though I wasn't sure if the creature could understand spoken language. But maybe the tone would convey meaning. Maybe the gesture itself would be enough to show my appreciation and respect. Then I left my own offering that day, an orange and some trail mix carefully placed on the rock next to where the fish had been. I backed away as always, maintaining the pattern we had established, respecting the boundaries. But I was smiling as I walked away. Couldn't help it. The Bigfoot wasn't just accepting my gifts anymore. The creature was actively participating in this exchange, this developing relationship. The intelligence required for that kind of reciprocity is significant. The Bigfoot understood that I was giving it food as a gesture of goodwill, understood that the appropriate response was to give something back, understood the social dynamics of gift giving in a way that went far beyond simple animal behavior. This was something with human-level understanding of social interaction. Over the next year, the gift exchanges continued. Sometimes I would catch glimpses of the Bigfoot in the distance, always keeping space between us. The creature never approached closer than about 30 yards, but the Bigfoot didn't run away immediately anymore either. I started recognizing certain patterns. The Bigfoot had a territory, certain areas it frequented more than others. I learned which trails the creature preferred, which time of day I was most likely to spot it. The Bigfoot seemed to prefer early morning or late afternoon, avoiding the middle of the day when other hikers were most common. Winter came and I worried about the Bigfoot surviving the cold. I left extra food every trip, sometimes making multiple visits in a week. I found tracks in the snow sometimes, large prints, definitely bipedal, much bigger than a human footprint. The tracks would appear and disappear near our meeting spot, proof that the Bigfoot was checking for my offerings even when I wasn't there. Spring returned, and I saw the Bigfoot more frequently. The creature was still cautious, still maintaining distance, but the encounters were happening more often. Sometimes I would arrive at the spot and the Bigfoot would already be there, waiting. The creature would watch me approach, then fade back into the trees as I got closer, but not running anymore, just calmly walking away. One day in early summer, I was sitting on a fallen log eating my lunch. I had been there for maybe 20 minutes, just relaxing, when I heard a sound. I looked up and the Bigfoot was standing about 30 yards away, just standing there in the open, watching me eat. My heart started racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. I slowly raised my hand and gave a small wave, just a simple greeting gesture. The Bigfoot tilted its head, studying me. Then the creature raised one long arm and moved it side to side, mimicking my wave. I couldn't believe it. The Bigfoot understood gestures, understood communication. This wasn't just a wild animal operating on instinct. This was something intelligent, something capable of learning and adapting. We stood there for maybe a minute, just looking at each other, then the Bigfoot turned and walked away. After that, the waves became regular. Every time we spotted each other, we would wave. It became our greeting, our way of acknowledging the friendship that was forming. But the Bigfoot never came closer than 30 yards. That seemed to be the boundary, the distance where the creature felt safe. 2 years into these encounters, something happened that changed everything between us. It was late autumn afternoon, the sun already starting to get low in the sky. I was hiking a ridge trail, exposed terrain with sparse trees and rocky outcrops. I noticed the Bigfoot paralleling my path about 100 yards away, higher up the slope. This had become almost normal by this point. The creature would sometimes follow along on my hikes, maintaining distance but clearly interested in where I was going. It felt like having a silent hiking companion. Then I heard something else, a low growl behind me. I turned slowly and my blood went cold. A mountain lion was crouched about 40 feet back on the trail, muscles tensed, ears flat against its head. It had been stalking me and I hadn't even noticed. Mountain lions are dangerous. They're ambush predators, and when they're hunting, they're focused and deadly. I started backing away slowly, remembering all the advice about never turning your back on a big cat. The mountain lion crept forward, matching my movement, getting ready to pounce. Then a sound erupted from up the slope, a roar that echoed off the rocks, not quite human, not quite animal, loud and aggressive and terrifying. I looked up and saw the Bigfoot charging down the slope, moving impossibly fast, arms spread wide to make itself look massive. The Bigfoot wasn't charging toward me. The creature was charging toward the mountain lion, roaring and making itself look as threatening as possible. The mountain lion's ears went flat, its eyes widened, and it spun around and bolted into the underbrush, disappearing in seconds. The Bigfoot stopped its charge about 20 feet from me. We stood there, both of us breathing hard, looking at each other. I could see the Bigfoot's chest heaving, could see the intelligence in its eyes. The creature had just protected me, had chosen to reveal itself to a predator, putting itself at risk to keep me safe. I raised my hand slowly, tears in my eyes, though I wasn't sure why. I whispered thank you, even though I knew the Bigfoot probably couldn't understand the words. But maybe the creature understood the emotion, the gratitude. The Bigfoot watched me for a long moment, then turned and walked back up the slope. The creature disappeared into the trees like always, but something fundamental had changed between us. I stood there shaking, not from the mountain lion encounter anymore, but from the realization of what had just happened. This Bigfoot cared about me, cared enough to risk its own safety, to break its pattern of staying hidden, to protect me from danger. Our friendship was real. After the mountain lion incident, something shifted fundamentally in our relationship. The Bigfoot seemed less cautious around me, more willing to close the distance between us. The creature would sometimes get within 20 yards now, close enough that I could see details I had never noticed before. Close enough that I could really study the Bigfoot and understand what I was looking at. The Bigfoot's face was definitely more human-like than ape-like. The features were unique, not quite matching anything else I'd ever seen, but closer to human than to any other primate. The eyes were large and expressive, capable of conveying emotion and thought in a way that was startlingly familiar. The creature's eyes would narrow when curious, widen when surprised, soften when relaxed. The Bigfoot's hands fascinated me. They were remarkably similar to human hands in structure and function, just larger and covered in that dark brown hair. The fingers were long and dexterous, capable of fine motor control. I had seen the creature manipulate objects with precision, pick berries with gentle care, handle the gifts I left with obvious understanding of their fragility or value. When the Bigfoot moved, there was a grace and purposefulness that spoke to high intelligence and body awareness. Every movement seemed deliberate, every step carefully placed. Nothing wasted, nothing clumsy. The creature moved through the forest like it was part of it, like the Bigfoot understood every tree and rock and stream on an intimate level that humans never could. Over the third and fourth years of our friendship, I noticed the Bigfoot was growing significantly. Each season when I saw the creature, it seemed taller and broader through the shoulders. The young Bigfoot I had first encountered was maturing into an adult right before my eyes, and watching that transformation was incredible. By the end of the third year, the Bigfoot was noticeably larger, maybe 6.5 feet tall now, with broader shoulders and a more powerful build. The creature's movements were becoming more confident as it grew, less tentative, more assured. The Bigfoot was coming into its strength, becoming the impressive being it was meant to be. During the fourth year, the growth continued. The Bigfoot was over 7 feet now, with massive shoulders and long, powerful arms. But despite the increasing size and obvious strength, the creature remained gentle in its movements around me, still careful, still deliberate, still treating me with a kind of respect that was touching. Sometimes the Bigfoot would follow me for entire hikes now, maintaining distance but clearly interested in my presence and activities. The creature would watch what I was doing, where I was going, how I interacted with the environment. It felt less like being followed by a wild animal and more like being accompanied by a curious friend. I noticed the Bigfoot would mimic some of my behaviors. If I stopped to examine an interesting plant, the Bigfoot would also stop and look at plants nearby. If I sat down to rest, the creature would find a place to sit at its comfortable distance. If I looked up at the sky or listened to bird calls, the Bigfoot would tilt its head and seem to be doing the same. This mirroring behavior suggested the creature was learning from me, absorbing information about how I moved through the world. I started leaving better food for the growing Bigfoot, things I thought would provide good nutrition for a maturing creature. Fresh fish from the store when I could get it, high-quality dried meats, fresh vegetables, and fruits. I wanted to help support the Bigfoot's growth, to contribute to the creature's health and development in whatever small way I could. The Bigfoot reciprocated with increasingly interesting gifts. Not just fish and berries anymore, but objects that seemed chosen for their aesthetic or unusual properties. Beautiful rocks with interesting colors or patterns, perfect pine cones, completely intact and symmetrical. Once, a deer antler that must have taken significant effort to find and carry to our meeting spot. We developed routines and patterns that gave structure to our friendship. Certain trails at certain times became our shared space. We had specific rocks where we would sit, specific clearings where we would meet. The Bigfoot would often be waiting near one of these spots when I arrived, like we had made an appointment that both of us remembered. We would wave to each other. I would leave whatever food or gifts I had brought. The creature would have already left something for me, and we would spend time in the same general area, just existing together in comfortable silence. Sometimes I would talk, telling the Bigfoot about my week or my thoughts, and the creature would sit there and listen. I don't know if the Bigfoot understood the words, but the act of listening felt meaningful anyway. Winter of the fourth year was particularly harsh. Deep snow and bitter cold that made hiking difficult and sometimes dangerous. The temperatures dropped below zero on many nights, and the wind chill made it feel even colder. I worried constantly about the Bigfoot having enough to eat, staying warm enough to survive. I brought extra food every trip, making the hike twice or even 3 times a week instead of just once. I wanted to make sure the Bigfoot had enough to survive the harsh conditions. Sometimes I would leave warm items too, like thermal blankets or heat-retaining materials, though I was never sure if the creature used them or understood their purpose. One snowy afternoon, I found something that made me smile and feel relieved. A shelter, crude but effective, constructed from branches and bark and positioned to block the worst of the wind. It was near one of our regular meeting spots, built in a spot that had natural protection from the elements. The Bigfoot had created it, had made a place to wait out the winter storms. The shelter was actually quite sophisticated for something made without tools. The branches were woven together in a way that would shed snow and rain. The bark was layered to provide insulation. The entrance faced away from the prevailing winds. The Bigfoot clearly understood principles of construction and weather protection. The creature was surviving just fine, probably better than I would have in similar circumstances. Spring of the 5th year brought warmer weather and new patterns in our relationship. The gifts the Bigfoot left started to seem more purposeful, more carefully chosen. A cluster of medicinal plants I recognized. One's good for reducing inflammation. The same plants the creature had brought when I injured my ankle. The Bigfoot remembered, was thinking about my health and well-being. Another time I found a piece of quartz crystal, perfectly clear and beautiful, left on our rock. It must have come from deeper in the mountains, from some location I had never visited. The Bigfoot had gone to effort to find it, to bring it to me. These weren't just random forest items anymore. The creature was sharing things it valued, things it thought I might appreciate or need. That level of thoughtfulness suggested deep understanding of friendship and gift-giving. By the 6th year, our encounters felt like genuine meetings between friends. I would sit on certain rocks or logs, and the Bigfoot would sit across from me, maybe 15 or 20 feet away. We would just exist in the same space together, comfortable silence stretching between us. Sometimes I would talk. I would tell the Bigfoot about my week, about my life, about whatever was on my mind. The creature would sit there and listen, head tilted slightly, like it was trying to understand. Maybe the Bigfoot didn't comprehend the words, but the act of listening felt meaningful anyway. I learned to read the Bigfoot's body language. I could tell when the creature was curious, when it was amused by something I did, when it was being cautious. The Bigfoot's posture and movements were remarkably expressive once I learned to pay attention to the subtle signals. The Bigfoot started showing me things, leading me to certain spots in the forest. A hidden waterfall I had never found in all my years of hiking these trails. A meadow full of wildflowers in summer. A massive, ancient tree that must have been hundreds of years old. It felt like the creature wanted to share its world with me, to show me the things it found beautiful or interesting. I noticed other things too, signs that the Bigfoot wasn't entirely alone. Sometimes I would find tracks that were too large, indicating others of its kind nearby. But they never showed themselves, never made contact. Only this one Bigfoot maintained the relationship with me. The 7th year brought more changes. The Bigfoot was now over 7 feet tall, massive through the shoulders and chest. But the creature was still gentle in its movements around me, still careful and deliberate. The size difference between us was now quite dramatic, but I never felt threatened. One autumn day, the Bigfoot brought me something different. A piece of wood, roughly carved with simple shapes etched into the surface. I couldn't tell if they meant something specific or were just decorative, but the effort was clear. The Bigfoot had made something specifically to give to me. I brought a metal camping mirror in return, one of those small, unbreakable ones. I showed it to the Bigfoot, then set it down where the creature could examine it. The Bigfoot approached cautiously, picked up the mirror, and discovered its own reflection. The wonder on the creature's face was unmistakable. The Bigfoot touched the mirror, looked behind it, held it at different angles, clearly amazed by this new experience. The creature spent maybe 20 minutes examining it from every angle before carefully carrying it away. These moments felt precious, like bridging two different worlds. The 8th year, early spring, I was hiking our usual trail when I slipped on wet rocks. I went down hard, twisting my ankle badly in the fall. The pain was immediate and intense. I sat there on the ground, knowing I was miles from the trailhead, wondering how I was going to make it back to my car. The Bigfoot appeared within minutes. The creature must have been nearby, must have heard me fall or cry out. The Bigfoot approached closer than it ever had before, maybe just 10 feet away, making worried sounds and pacing back and forth. I pulled up my pant leg and showed the Bigfoot my ankle. It was already swelling, turning purple and angry looking. The Bigfoot looked at it, then looked at me, then suddenly turned and disappeared into the forest. For a moment, I thought the creature was leaving me there alone. But the Bigfoot came back 20 minutes later, carrying plants. The creature placed them near me and pointed at my ankle. I recognized the plants immediately. Natural anti-inflammatory herbs that grew in these mountains. My grandmother had taught me about them years ago. I chewed up the plants like she had shown me, made a poultice, and applied it to my injured ankle. The Bigfoot sat nearby the entire time, watching, staying close. When I finally managed to stand up, testing my weight carefully, the creature stayed beside me. I walked slowly back toward the trailhead, limping heavily, and the Bigfoot followed at a distance. Every time I stopped to rest, the creature would stop too, waiting patiently. Once I finally reached my car and got inside, the Bigfoot vanished back into the trees. That night, I realized how much I trusted this being, how real our friendship had become over all these years. The Bigfoot had recognized I was hurt, had known exactly what would help, and had stayed with me to make sure I got back safely. That level of care and concern wasn't something you could fake or misinterpret. The 9th year, the Bigfoot was fully grown, over 8 feet tall, incredibly powerful looking, but our bond was stronger than ever. We had our established spots, our routines, our silent understanding of each other. One summer evening, we were sitting across from each other as the sun set, painting the sky in oranges and purples. The Bigfoot reached out and placed something in the space between us, a stone, smooth and round, worn perfectly by water over countless years. The creature must have found it in the river. I picked up the stone, held it, looked at the Bigfoot. The creature placed its hand on its own chest, then pointed to me. The meaning was clear, a gift of friendship, a token of all our years together. My throat tightened with emotion. I pulled out my pocket knife, old and worn. It had been my grandfather's, given to me when I was 12 years old. I had carried it on every hike for over 30 years. I placed it in the space between us and slid it forward, offering it to the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot picked it up carefully, examining it with obvious curiosity and care. The creature opened the blade, closed it again, then held the knife to its chest the same way I had held the stone. We sat together until dark, neither of us wanting to leave, both understanding that something significant had passed between us. Autumn came, and I continued my weekly hikes, but there was a feeling in the air, something changing, something ending. I couldn't put my finger on it exactly, just a sense that our time together was coming to a close. The Bigfoot seemed different too, more restless, spending more time looking toward the deeper wilderness, the more remote peaks. The creature would still meet me, would still wave and sit with me, but there was a distance now that wasn't physical, like the Bigfoot's mind was already somewhere else. The last time I saw the Bigfoot was a cold November morning. I was on one of our usual trails when I felt that familiar sensation of being watched. I looked up and saw the creature standing on a distant ridge, silhouette against the sunrise. The Bigfoot raised its arm in our familiar wave. I waved back, tears streaming down my face, though I didn't fully understand why. Deep down, I knew this was goodbye. The creature stood there for another minute, then turned and walked away, heading toward the remotest peaks in the distance. I never saw the Bigfoot again. I continued hiking those trails for years after. I left offerings at our usual spots, but they were never taken. The gifts just sat there until weather and wildlife claimed them. I understood somehow that the Bigfoot had moved on, maybe deeper into the wilderness where humans never went, maybe to find others of its kind. Maybe for reasons I would never understand, sometimes I would find signs that gave me hope. A distant track that looked familiar, rocks arranged in a way that seemed too purposeful to be natural. Small reminders that the Bigfoot was still out there somewhere, still alive, still moving through those mountains. The smooth stone the Bigfoot gave me stays in my pocket always. I carry it everywhere, not just on hikes. Whenever life feels too complicated, too human, too overwhelming, I hold that stone and remember those silent encounters. That impossible friendship. I never told anyone the full story. Who would believe it? A friendship with a Bigfoot that lasted 9 years, gift exchanges and waves in the mountain lion incident. It sounds like something from a movie, not real life. So I just tell people I like hiking, that I enjoy nature, and I keep the truth to myself. But sometimes late at night, I wonder if the Bigfoot thinks about me too. If somewhere in those vast mountains, the creature still remembers the human who brought food every weekend, who waved back, who sat in comfortable silence and became a friend. The experience changed me in ways that are hard to explain. I see the world differently now. There are mysteries out there, intelligences we don't understand, beings living parallel lives that rarely intersect with our human existence. We think we know everything about the natural world, but we don't. Not even close. Maybe one day I'll round a corner and see that familiar shape in the distance. Maybe I'll hear that sound that isn't quite human and isn't quite animal. Maybe we'll wave to each other one more time and share that space together again, even if just for a moment. Until then, I have the memories, the stone in my pocket, the knowledge that once, for 9 extraordinary years, I had a friend unlike any other. A Bigfoot who grew from a young creature to a powerful adult, while maintaining a friendship with a human who could barely believe what he was experiencing. That friendship, however impossible it seems to others, was completely real. It wasn't a fantasy or a delusion or a misidentification of some known animal. It was a genuine relationship between 2 intelligent beings from different species, built on mutual respect and trust and curiosity about each other's worlds. If you want to hear more interesting Bigfoot stories, consider checking this out.